Hello, insatiable listeners. We have now concluded our season 9 of Fiery Fertility. I have heard from so many of you how much you love the season. And if you haven't listened to season 9, I highly recommend you check it out, whether you're in the market for kids or not. It's really a look into our feminine power and how to access that through nutrition, our healthcare choices, and owning our story. We are now on hiatus between seasons, and I'm on maternity leave. I will be back on January 15th with a brand new season 10, which will be a crash course in truths with food. We will look at the root causes of why we can't lose weight and how addressing these root causes, which aren't about willpower or discipline, can make us feel back in control of food, get off the all or nothing roller coaster, get us to stop monitoring ourselves all the time and trust ourselves when the dessert cart comes. All with a main course of self-compassion and self-acceptance that doesn't have to mean resignation if you aren't comfortable in your body. When you can accomplish this freedom and consistency, weight loss can be a side effect. I'm so excited to share this season with you. And Truths with Food, my signature boutique group program, will begin in March 2020 for another round. In the meantime, enjoy these popular Insatiable rebroadcast episodes to help you thrive during the holiday season and set you up really well for 2020. Can you believe it? It's 2020. All right. I look forward to reconnecting in the new year.
Unconsciously, they've often not chosen growth. And so these patterns get built up over time and it becomes normalized. I have a piece coming out in my newsletter about your green juice doesn't make you more moral and how health isn't a meritocracy. We'll have to do an episode on that. But I talk about in health, we've normalized paying more for egg whites, rather than eating the egg yolk.
I couldn't focus on looking a certain way anymore. It came from, I am sick and tired of feeling bad about myself. I want power. I want to feel good about myself. I don't want to look in the mirror and just see negativity and only care about what I look like. It's not getting me anywhere. It's a hamster wheel that I'm on and it's awful.
You know battling food and your body doesn't work. You want to love and accept yourself. And because you're insatiable, you want results too. And wouldn't you know, you bring the same intensity to your life, wanting to maximize your time, potential, and experiences you have here on this beautiful and wondrous planet Earth. Fair warning, it will be a roller coaster, but for those insatiable, that's your prime time to thrive. We're here to say yes to the hunger of wanting it all. I'm your co-host, Ali Shapiro, a health coach who helps people end the losing battle of dieting and find a truce with food.
And I'm Juliette Berg, nutritionist, fitness expert, and the co-owner of Unite Fitness Studio franchise.
Welcome to episode 67. Why do I fall off the wagon with food? You eat clean, you eat garbage. It's a cycle you can't seem to break. Why are you so able to be in control at certain times in your life and others you just fall apart? The answers are awaiting you in this episode. Discover the core of what it takes to be consistent. And no matter what roadblocks come your way, you have the personal power to run them over rather than let them run you.
Hello, insatiable listeners. Julia and I today are talking about why people go off track or fall off the wagon or go in phases with good and bad eating. And I just love this topic because it gets to the heart of the matter, the core, Juliette. Don't you think?
Yes. And so much of the time people will come in to see me and that's really what they start with, which is, I just can't seem to stay consistent. I just can't seem to stay on track. I'm good for a little while and then I'm bad. And then I'm good for a little while and then I'm bad. And they have this very black and white mentality about it.
Yeah. And I think what we'll focus on today is not like the mini dynamics of like maybe you start out the day well and by the evening, but the bigger pattern that's at play when you've been, I often hear from clients, I was working with a trainer and I was meal planning and I was doing this for like 6 months. Sometimes I stuck with it for like a year and a half or a year.
And you would think that's enough time, right? Habits are created in a few months. So they would be set from all of that.
Right. And then they're like, and then I just fell off. Like it was unsustainable. I couldn't keep it up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the what the hell, right? Like, what the hell?
Well, I think what we're going to talk about a little bit today is change is constant, right? You're never going to be with the trainer for the rest of your life that amount of time, or,
If you're independently wealthy, you could, but for
yeah.
the rest of us.
Even as you age, right, things will change. You might need something else. And so because change is constant, you have to learn how to adapt.
Yeah.
And if you never learn how to adapt, this is where the core is.
Yeah. So let's talk about the core and this is for you insatiable listeners, what Juliet and I are going to be talking about, or my workshop is on for our insatiable retreat, which is Saturday, March 11th from 10 to 3 in Center City, Philadelphia. But what happens is people start off by setting the wrong goal. So their goals are, well, let's first back up. So what's really happening, okay, when people go on and off for these long periods of time are they felt in control of the conditions in their life. And even if they weren't completely in control of everything, they were having enough, what I call agency, personal independent choice, that they could keep their food, quote unquote, under control. Okay. So, people often they will go off or fall off the wagon during some sort of, like you said, change. It's a transition. They change jobs. Their relationship is on the rocks. Right now, we're going through a very challenging political climate. I know a lot of my clients feel overwhelmed with just not knowing what's going to happen, right? We just don't know. Things are fundamentally changing. And so anytime there's a transition like that, there is a considerable amount of uncertainty.
Yes, it's like I almost have this visual of like the ground crumbling underneath you a little bit.
Yes. And depending on where what I call your stories, your vulnerable stories, we all have different cracks and we all have different things that crumble them. It's not the relationship itself. It's not the political climate itself. It's not the job itself. It's my belief in my ability to work through this.
It's what they represent to you, which you might not even realize because they might be blind spots. And for most of us, they are. And so when I'll use an example of someone who I know, not naming names, but she is going through a very hard time in her relationship and with her partner. And because of this hard time, all of a sudden her disordered eating and exercising and this behavior is coming back full on. And she was, I guess you could call it a remission for a long, long time, where she had none of that. And she felt like she had a really good, healthy relationship with food and exercise. But it was only because circumstantially she had these false senses of control for many, many years. And now that things are very out of control, she is all of a sudden finding herself right back to where she was years ago and questioning, like, how could this be happening?
Yeah, and it's all invisible. And so you think it's the food, right? You don't see what's challenging about our stories, that all of our stories come back. We feel uncertain in different areas. It doesn't mean that there's always uncertainty in life, but in certain areas we feel really confident in that uncertainty. So some people feel really confident in their relationship skills. Even if something is going difficult, they feel confident they can rise to the occasion. When people switch jobs, oftentimes they're like, I got this. I've done this before. I know how to do it. So it's when we feel like there's an area that's uncertain where we have vulnerabilities in our own abilities. So I want to make sure, because I think what gets challenging with clients is they're like, I thought I was so confident, or I thought I was really good at this. And it's a normalization that now we're unnormalizing them. No, it doesn't mean you're not confident in how at work. It doesn't mean you're not confident in your marriage. It means parenting, there's no right way to do it. And in this new change with your kid getting diagnosed with X or whatever is new territory. And if you already feel like, I don't know how to be a great parent, then it's just like, then something threatening happens, right? Or quote unquote bad happens. It's like, oh my God, this just confirmed my worst nightmare. Like I am bad at my job, or I am, if you get fired, or you're, whatever it is, that's when that vulnerability, it was vulnerable to begin with in a way that maybe was tolerable, but something just got piled on it that it flipped it to the point that it's just intolerable now.
Yeah. And I mean, we are all meant to grow and evolve, not stay stagnant. So when these things rear their ugly head, in the moment, I know it can be really hard to say, oh yeah, I'm learning from this right now.
That's the one, like, you mentally give someone the middle finger when they're like, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. There's a pain period, right? And we all go through it, but this is for growth. It is for change. Nothing is stagnant. We're always moving.
Yeah.
And, you wouldn't want to have it all figured out. It doesn't, at least I think that's what Gallie and I are kind of getting to, we will in the episode, which is talking about having the ability to grow and to take on more and more and keep taking on more and more. And there's no ceiling for how much you can take on.
Right. And I think, though, just to back up, where the agency piece comes in, agency is having independent choice. And many of us don't know these stories or even controlling our lives. Like, we're so focused on being chosen or approved of or liked, right? Like, what does it look like to be a good parent? What does it look like to do good at my job? What does it look like to have the perfect engagement, right?
Like, someone say to me the other day, I'm not that person. That's embarrassing if I'm that person. It was something that they didn't want to call out sick or something. I said, what is that? What do you mean you're not that person?
Right. Well, and that's what in the workshop of our retreat that I'm going to be talking about is this good girl or good guy gridlock. And what keeps us gridlocked from emotionally growing is trying to live up to these external standards that we have never explored if we really care about. It doesn't mean that it's finding that delicate balance. You can't just say you don't care when anyone thinks about you, because we need people, we need community. So when stuff like this happens, it can be growth, but you have to choose that. What my clients start to realize is unconsciously they've often not chosen growth. And so these patterns get built up over time and it becomes normalized. I have a piece coming out in my newsletter about your green juice doesn't make you more moral and how health isn't a meritocracy. We'll have to do an episode on that. But I talk about in health, we've normalized paying more for egg whites, rather than eating the egg yolk. We've normalized bottling water, which has now enabled corporations to make it a commodity like Nestle. We've normalized medicating anxiety and depression with medicine while contributing to it with low-fat diets and no sense of agency or control. So we normalize these emotional states and what we're really capable of over decades often. The good news is, though, that you don't have to take decades to reverse it, but you do have to choose to look at how you're actually contributing to your own disempowerment. And that, after you feel kind of, oh my God, get to that phase of acceptance of what's going on here, that's when you really, I think, have the opportunity to choose differently.
So much you just said there. I hope the listeners are just letting that digest a little bit.
Yeah, I think here's how I hear it in food terms, right? My clients often come to me saying they want to feel like the real them, right? I want to feel like the real me. And I used to earlier, before I really got clear on what they were really saying that they didn't know they were saying, was there's this powerful side of me that exists. And then something disconnects me from that. Something pulls me into battle with food, which is really a battle with myself. Mm-hmm. And so the real goal in times of like these is not to go on a diet. It's not to double down on food or exercise. It's to get clear on what that disconnect is. That disconnect that brings you into battle where you're like, why am I doing this? Right? Or it can feel like more control. And that disconnect is what I call your maximized goal. You really have to get a clear diagnosis on what that disconnect is. And it is different for every person.
Meaning the goal isn't, I want to be the real me, or I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to be able to fit into it, wear a bikini on the beach. Those are not your real goals.
Right. Your real goal is to figure out what is gridlocking you and how to heal that emotional story. So for example, I was talking with a client this week and we're about a month into our work. So 2 sessions, and she's making she's like figured out what diet has worked best for her, noun, not verb. And she's feeling so much calmer. And we've identified her story. And she's like, oh my God, I'm like eating less. My cravings are down. I'm just happier and more peaceful. And this really feels like it's going to work. I was like, great. She's like, but I'm worried about the scale. Like I haven't got on it.
I was just
right?
thinking that.
Yeah.
It's like,
and she's like, and I see Oprah and she's on Weight Watchers and she's losing all that weight.
oh my gosh.
But this is what you have to contend with.
It is. It really is. Because you're getting messages everywhere you turn.
Right. And I said, but Oprah's goal is to lose weight. Yours is to heal. And she said, you're right. You're right. And it was just like, and I was like, I promise.
And I think that's, for me, when I was struggling with food, that is what it came down for me. It wasn't, I couldn't focus on looking a certain way anymore. It came from, I am sick and tired of feeling bad about myself. I want power. I want to feel good about myself. I don't want to look in the mirror and just see negativity and only care about what I look like. It's not getting me anywhere. It's a hamster wheel that I'm on, and it's awful.
Right. And what we don't realize, and takes a really long time to extricate from yourself, is you actually, the real you, the powerful you, doesn't care if you overeat one night, doesn't care if you skip the gym. But you've been conditioned by culture, by societal norms to feel bad about that. And that's when you don't have choice, because that narrative of what, especially women, although I will say more men and more boys are developing eating disorders. So this is no longer a gender specific thing. The culture is telling you that you should feel bad about that. And often we say it's no, but I really care. And yeah, you may really care. But I think the deeper craving is to feel whole and heal and become independent and unattached to that. But it takes understanding why you're going off track or falling off the wagon. And it's invisible. It's very hard to see because it's invisible.
It's interesting you're saying this because, being in the fitness world, so many trainers and fitness instructors that I know, they oftentimes have very disordered perception of what they look like. And that's one of the reasons why they're in the business, is just, they're attracted to it. They're trying to heal themselves, but they're going about it a lot of times the wrong way, and they're not practicing necessarily what they're preaching. But I've noticed a trend lately in fitness, and maybe I can just see it a little differently than other people because of the healing work that I've done for myself. But I've noticed that it has become socially acceptable and part of my field that instructors work out 3, 4, 5 times a day.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we're all going to yoga together, and then I'm teaching. Sorry, I'm still battling a cold here. Teaching a spin class, and then I'm going to go lift weights with my friend later, and it's just a part of them. It's the culture. It's a socially acceptable thing.
Yeah, I did a consult at a conference once with a woman who was really lovely, and she was a trainer, and she told me that she was like healing from being a trainer. She got a boob job to be a trainer. She was like, I was barely eating. I was doing cleanses all the time. And like, then her hair started to fall out and all this stuff. But she said there's so much pressure, right? Because we think health looks a certain way. And she just got really exhausted from it. And I think that's what's so dangerous about, I obviously got into nutrition because I had the crazy relationship with food. I think we all type A people were like, we're going to figure this out. And we think by immersing ourselves. But I think for everyone listening, it's really important that you're paying attention to information from people who have healed. And they may not be the people keeping up the myth of what a healthy body looks like, right? But I think that's really important and obviously if you're listening to this podcast, you're on the right track. And I'm biased, but it's also the truth. But obviously you're influenced by other media. I do not watch really mainstream media, but apparently Khloe Kardashian was saying how she's an emotional eater, and someone shared the episode, and I didn't click on it, but the headline was something about like how losing her dad like changed her, like caused like eating, or I don't know the whole story. I didn't click on it, but she's even someone who says she's an emotional eater, but now she's getting all this attention for losing all that weight. And but still saying like, oh, I struggle. And I don't know if that's part of her PR plan to look relatable or not. You don't know what you can believe, but people have still separated it. Even if they're succeeding in the moment, they still have separated it. Like,
I totally understand what you're saying. And she has a show right now. And one of the things that bothers me about her show is that in every episode, she sits down with someone. First of all, it's called Revenge Body.
oh my God.
About losing weight to get revenge on someone who called you fat or made you feel bad about yourself.
So just stop it. That plays into that narrative that thinness is power. And it's not.
Exactly. So that's the whole, I don't need to say much more about the show. I think that says it all, but it's about that. It's like, I'll show you. And it's not even doing it for yourself. It's doing it for media and to prove that you're worthy based on your body. I can't even with that show. Like,
I didn't even know it existed. I'm more disturbed.
I always have to watch these shows because they have celebrity trainers on them. So I'm always curious, like, to see
well, and
what styles are and what they're doing, you know?
That's another thing, though. People often think celebrities have access to the best people. They might, but that doesn't mean they're picking the best people. Like just to everyone, so you know, if you follow celebrities and their trainers, so celebrities are no smarter or discerning than the average person. In fact, they might be less so because people tell them what they want to hear.
It is really about who you know.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
In the industry, you know, I'll give an example. Years ago when I was working at a gym in New York, we had a ton of celebrities come in every day. And one day Kanye West was there and he came and visited. He brought his trainer there. And no one was really allowed to go near him, but like we were watching him work out. And, the things his trainer had him doing in the form, like the form was bad. It was so bad, Allie. I was like, I can't watch this right now. Like his back was being thrown out of alignment. I was like, it just goes to show you it's not necessarily about your skill set sometimes, which is unfortunate, right?
Right.
It's about who you know and the reputation that you get. And if you have Kanye, well, then I'm sure you're going to probably have, oh, you train with that person, so then I'll train with you. Oh, and then it's just like, it goes from there.
Yeah, no, it's totally crazy, but we use these as models, right? Like templates of stuff. So getting back to this, so it's really when you're falling off the wagon or your fits and starts, you really need to figure out what is this disconnect. And I call this your maximized goal, because this is the goal that teaches you to truly take care of yourself and be able to prioritize yourself and strike that balance between being totally passive with what's emotionally happening with you and being totally overwhelmed. So when we're passive, we eat or we fixate on the food. We think the food's the issue. So we fixate on working out harder and eating stricter, or you can't control it. But rather than trying to find a new diet or think you have to jump to a plan, okay, the agency choice, the powerful choice is, what am I feeling vulnerable about here? What identity do I feel is threatened right now? Is it being a good parent? Is it that my job changed and I'm under so much stress, right? But stress is this generic term, and it's only stressful if we feel we don't have a choice or that we're capable in that change again.
And maybe the word vulnerable doesn't really ring true for you yet, although it should become that. But you might just ask yourself, what am I scared of? Because it's fear. It's all fear-based.
Yes. And we've been taught that when you feel fear, to stop, right? To oh my God, I need to stop. And then your mind starts making up things like, I should, I must, I have to be this way, I have to do this. And that's just kind of where fear has found how to hang out in your mind. It's and rather than going to a diet or working out harder, it's really important to find out, how do I transform this? Because overwhelm is when you just sit in it forever. And that's an important point I wanted to make, is that you do need to feel that, like you said, Juliet, you need to feel those emotions. The challenge and the dance is to not get so overwhelmed by them that they aren't useful anymore. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately what you have to do to have power and agency is that same feeling of discomfort. And this takes time, so this isn't going to happen overnight. But that same feeling of discomfort that used to make you think, oh Oh my God. At first, it'll make you think you have to go find a new diet or that you need to be stricter or whatever. When you get to the core issue, then it's going to say, oh man, I don't know how I'm going to figure this out. And more, the more times you test that, this is what I do with my clients. I teach them skills to test that. Is this really stressful? Is this really your worst nightmare? How are you creating the stress, which we often do? But that same feeling when you feel uncertainty starts to be like, this is going to be interesting. What new moves can I try is basically what it comes down to. And that's why, my clients are like, I just feel so free. It's not because their life has gotten easier.
Because
No.
they're not feeling controlled by external forces anymore.
Exactly. This focus goes from giving the power to food to reclaiming the power within yourself.
Yeah, Elizabeth Gilbert, I was listening to an interview with her recently, and she said that so many women obviously have been so inspired by her book, Eat, Pray, Love, because, it's an awesome book. But that the one thing that it's kind of underlying beneath all of it, all of the external forces, is they want to know how they can be, like you said, who they really are. And what that really means is like, what was I put on this planet to do?
Yes. And I think
that's a huge, overwhelming question.
It is. I know she had a huge post on power and agency, actually. And I shared it with my Truths with Food group. And they were like, okay. And they all like her. And they were like, this is great. However, it's the how. And they're like, this is what we're learning here.
It is the how. Yep.
Yeah. They're like, this is great. And it's rah. And though it's a lot harder than these inspirational posts.
So I think if you focus not necessarily on this big picture, like, what am I put on this earth to do? Am I supposed to be a botanist? Am I supposed to be an astronaut? Am I, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go with it. We're like, what am I, how am I supposed to serve humanity? How about, how are you supposed to feel throughout the day?
And
focus on your feelings.
And realize that your purpose isn't one giant thing. It's an everyday thing. Since the election, I've been trying to do just like kind things or things that aren't about me that get me out of my life. Like the other day, I had these like really great potatoes that I didn't finish all at lunch. And there was a homeless guy. And I would have never done that before, but because I was like, oh, I'll save these for lunch tomorrow and I won't have to cook again.
Yeah.
And I just gave them to him. And he was like, do they have like cheese and bacon on them? I'm like, no, lemon and rosemary. But I did that, and then like
it's funny versus like our friends, are these gluten-free?
Yeah, I know. He was a little disappointed, but I was like, it's what I have,
Yeah.
But just doing like, it's like, that feels good. That feels great. I've been doing some stuff around the Affordable Care Act. I was at City Hall in Pittsburgh kind of talking about how by 2020, 40% of the workforce will be small business owners, contractors, freelancers. And we need an affordable healthcare solution for everyone. But the economy is shifting that way. And it just felt really good to be contributing to how I want to see our current healthcare system evolve and change and improve upon. And so you start to say like, oh, I like this about this. I love this about this.
What do you care about? It's really the question to ask yourself. What do you care about? And there's definitely answers there for you.
Yeah, I wrote a piece for Thrive Global that was on the homepage, people. And one of the things I talked about when you're trying to develop your agency, there's 3 questions. And I think you can do this when Juliet hyped on, you're probably going to say, what am I afraid of here, right? What do I fear here? Really, rather than being consumed by the fear, part of having agency is knowing your own goals. It's not about looking good. It's not about looking perfect. That's what society has chosen for you. That's not what you would choose for yourself. But the 3 questions I gave in the article is, what do I care about here? And that answer might not come right away. You don't have to answer it in rapid succession. What do I want to see live in this world? I think about like, what do you care about so much that it's worth your time and effort? And what can I do to support my values? And if you take those questions, the answers will come. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but that's how you can start to develop power and agency, that individual choice. Because if we're consumed by our emotions, and consumed is an important metaphor because then we tend to consume food, we don't have a choice in that. And we have to learn to make that discomfort. We have to chisel something really powerful out of that.
And lastly, I think I'll add to that just something really small that people can do that I even practiced today on my way to our podcast. Today was a very, very hectic day for me in that I did a lot of different things and I was feeling stressed out about, okay, and then I got to go home and I got to do the show and no time to decompress. And it's very important for me to get that time usually. And so as I was walking back home, I was feeling that feeling of overwhelm. And one moment of checking in with myself and saying, does this feeling, this really overwhelming sensation match what the reality of the situation is? And it totally just mitigated it. I was like, no, it doesn't. And, I started walking a little slower and enjoying my walk home, not rushing, speed walking here, and just understanding, how grateful I am for, it's not like I'm going home to like some sort of abuse or anything.
Don't abuse you, Julia.
Oh, Allie, you're so abusive. We do this in our lives. We make up these, we would dramatize a lot of stuff that, and yes, work is hard. Yes, family life is hard. Yes, it all, there's a lot that's on our plate. But I think check in with yourself throughout the day and say, does the feeling I have inside match what's really going on the outside?
I love that you said that. That is one of the critical foundations to developing agency. And that's what I work on with my clients. Is this feeling true? Because what happens, and this is a whole other podcast, and this is like the crux of Truth with Food, is that when we feel that overwhelming sensation, then we look at all the data that's coming at us as overwhelming.
Everything, every little thing.
Yeah. And and if you're a perfectionist, which again, doesn't mean that you're Martha Stewart with your life in a bow on top. It means I have to look the best. Right. And so
everybody's version of that is different.
Right. But most perfectionists, if they aren't guns blazing confident, like if they haven't done things over the top, everything else feels overwhelming. Right. So there's only one emotional key that you feel safe on. And that is what you really have to transform. And so what you said is basically putting boundaries around that feeling helps give you some distance, which is so critical to this. So, and wrapping up, I just want people to realize, like, first of all, to get back on the bandwagon or to not fall off is first you have to have an accurate diagnosis of what's going on. Just like, I'm sure most people listening have gone to the doctor and they're like, oh, we're going to give you antibiotics, or they made things worse, or they're like, we just really don't know what's going on here. And Einstein said, one of my favorite quotes of quote lore is, he said, if I had an hour to save the world, I'd spend more time defining the problem than solving it. And we really lack clarity around why we're falling off the wagon. So really understand, get a clear diagnosis of what you're afraid of. Like Juliet said, what am I fearing here? Where do I feel like I'm not looking good? But then you want to turn internally and own that feeling. What does it make me feel like when I feel like I'm not looking good? I can't put that on the outside of the world. And so what you're really trying to do is diagnose the disconnect from the really.
And so what does it make me feel like? And then what are you afraid of? By having those feelings or having that vulnerability, what meaning are you making out of that?
Yeah. So what am I making this mean is a great question. And then really understanding that's the disconnect. That's what you need to work on, is working through those feelings. And I really think movement is really great. So many of my clients, they found that one of the best tools is as they're getting better at this, because at first the feeling could consume you for like a day or two and you might not know what it is, right? This takes time. But they find that like just taking a break at work and like walking around and it's like the same way that you get your best ideas in the shower. It's like, let me ask the question and then let me go move a little bit. Let me take a walk. And then it's like, oh my God, this is what I'm really afraid of. And X, Y, and Z. And so again, and then those questions to ask with like, what do I care about here? Right? I'm afraid of X, Y. I might be afraid of X, but here's what I really want to happen in this situation. And then what do I want to see live in the world? And what can I do to support my values? And the more you just walk those steps through kind of like a labyrinth, the more power and agency you get, and the less you fall off the wagon. That's where the heart of consistency is. And if you want to get really clear on the disconnect that is dressing up all the time, it may feel like it's different disconnects, but it's the same tension and story that causes this disconnect. That's what I call is your maximized goal. And we're going to be diagnosing everyone's for them. Well, you're going to be doing it because I can't do it for you at the Insatiable Retreat, March 11th. And it's so relieving. and exciting and like, oh, this is what I need to work on. not like counting more food or another way to like play Tetris with my plate. So, and then Juliet's going to work us out so we can do that integration. And then we'll have time for Q&A. So that's Thursday or Saturday, March 11th.
I cannot wait for that. It's going to be so fun.
I know it's going to be so fun. And if you are in New York, I'll be coming to New York on Tuesday, March 14th to do the same Path Forward workshop. So
so you guys can go to Allie's website to sign up for that retreat.
AllieShapiro.com/insatiable retreat. And we're also going to have healthy lunch and like really healthy lunch, not what like companies think is healthy. When they give you like fruit salad and
like turkey sandwiches.
Yeah, with Diet Coke.
All right, on that note, guys, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to pop over to the Facebook page. It is just facebook.com/insatiable podcast, and leave us a review on iTunes, please. It just takes a couple minutes of your time and it helps us to keep the show alive. So we would really appreciate that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Insatiable podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can connect with us on social media. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Juliet Unite and Allie at Allie M. Shapiro. M stands for Marie. Please feel free to also email us any questions. We would love to hear from all our listeners. You can reach us at Allie at AllieShapiro.com and Juliet at UniteFitness.com. We'll see you next time.